Hello, I'm Christine and welcome back to my channel. So today's Sunday and I'm realizing that I need to reset in my kitchen. I am a mom to four and also a working mom, and yesterday I was gone all day and just realizing now that we are really low on food. I don't have a plan for the week. I don't know what they're going to eat for lunch or what snacks to pack. So I decided that today I would focus on resetting my kitchen and preparing for the week. So I'm starting off by cleaning out my fridge. This is awesome to do before you head to the store because when you get home, you can just put everything back in a nice organized fashion. So this morning I got up early around 5, which is pretty typical for me. And I already had my bread dough, my sourdough sitting overnight, and I knew that I was going to bake it in the morning. So I did that first thing. And I also prepared some sourdough muffin mix and I stuck that in the fridge. So those were just like 2 quick things I did in the morning. And then I moved on to getting ready and then I moved on to cleaning. So that's what I'm doing now, and we still have about an hour before we need to leave for church. So I'm just getting all the things done that I can. I have little ones coming in and out asking for drinks and snacks and things of that nature. So just taking care of that. I have another child who needs water. But yeah, so with cleaning my fridge, I try and get everything out, and I also vacuum it, which is awesome to do. I use Force of Nature cleaner. If you haven't checked them out before, you should definitely do that. They're all natural cleaner, as effective as bleach, but also super safe. Like you can use it on baby toys. I discovered this cleaner many years ago, and it's been the only cleaner that I use in my house. So I will also leave a link for them in the description. This is my homemade yogurt. I make that once a week. My boys really like yogurt in the morning. And when I make a whole gallon of yogurt, it just saves us so much money and just really fills their bellies. I try to take the produce out of the plastic so that it doesn't go bad. This is my Force of Nature cleaner again. I'm just trying to get a bit good sanitize over the whole kitchen because I know that later I'm going to come in here with all of the food and all the prep and it's just going to get totally messy again. I did some baking soda and vinegar in the sink, and I'm just trying to give everything a good scrub down. I really try to get behind the faucet, although it's hard to fit my sponge behind the faucet. It really doesn't fit. So that part of the kitchen always feels a little messy to me. Anyways, moving on. I am making granola bars. As I said, I'm trying to prepare for the week. I always try to seize the moments of time. So if I see that I have a few hours, I try to take advantage of it because I know that later on I'm not going to have time. So that's how I'm able to get my work done, to take care of my kids, to do all the things, is you really just have to seize those pockets of time. These granola bars turned out amazing. I did have to add a couple of extra steps because I didn't have the rice cereal, so I ended up just breaking up the Chex Mix. I also had to pulse my oats in the food processor because I didn't have quick oats. So those were just 2 added steps that are not typically necessary, so this recipe should be even easier. But anyways, I will link the recipe down below because my kids loved this and they didn't fall apart and they were so easy to pack, and I ended up loving them too. I normally don't eat snacks like this, but they were really tasty. So I pushed these down into the container and sprinkled some chocolate chips on top and then pressed those down, and then I can just cover it and put it in the fridge and they'll harden up and I can cut them and wrap them later for school lunches. All right, so we did go to church and we got back from church, and now this is the after church hustle. We all get home hungry and my bread was ready to go, so I'm just basically slicing it up and passing it around. Everyone's having different types of sandwiches. I'm making a ham and cheese sandwich for my son, and then I always like to make an egg and cheese sandwich using Kerrygold cheese. It's basically my everyday lunch. Sometimes I put avocado on it, sometimes I put tomatoes on it. But anyways, I am a creature of habit and I love those sandwiches. So these are the sourdough muffins that I prepared earlier. So all I had to do was just stick them in this tray and put them in the oven. And I definitely overfilled them, and so they were a little tricky to get out, and I also forgot to spray the pan, but they did come out and all was well. What is this called? Okay. Beef chuck roast, mace, spinach, microgreens, oranges, mushrooms, and avocados. Alright, so I thought I would show you my Costco haul. For a family of 6, I tried to go really light today. I did not want to spend a lot of money. And this morning I spent some time meal planning. So I'm gonna make French dip sandwiches. So I got pot roast. So this will go in the slow cooker tomorrow. And I'm gonna make the whole thing. And then later in the week we're gonna have like steak fries with peppers and this pot roast on it, and just bake it and make it into a nice sheet pan meal. And since I already have russet potatoes and I already have peppers, I did not have to buy that. And then I'm also going to make some chicken and wild rice soup because I already have chicken broth that I need to use up.
Here's your peanut butter.
Thank you. And then I have all the veggies I needed except for mushrooms, so I did get mushrooms. Okay. So I'm planning to make some nice like deli meat sandwiches for lunches. So we got some roasted turkey breast and some I don't know how to say it, Campari. These are really yummy. This is for the French dip sandwiches, provolone. Big bag of garlic. We use that all the time. Spinach. I actually store this in the freezer and I use it in my smoothies. They had microgreens at Costco today, which I've never seen before. It was actually the last one and I got it. Avocados. We use this for smoothies and obviously any Mexican dishes. School snacks. I didn't get any snacks that come in a package because not only do I not want processed foods, I also don't want to spend more on food that someone made for me and put in a package. I really try to keep up with homemade snacks, homemade bread, homemade treats. I'm definitely not perfect. There'll be times I'll go and I'll get stuff, but I feel better about it if I make it at home and I know the ingredients, and I also just think that it saves us a lot of money. So I try to buy the staples like oats, flour, chocolate chips, things like that, in order to make any sort of homemade snack. I did buy this big old bag of chocolate chips in bulk. It's definitely a great deal. We really like this chicken sausage. Tonight we're gonna have breakfast for dinner, so I'm gonna cook up some sausage and I'm gonna make sweet potato hash and eggs. Since we just went shopping today, trying to keep dinner just kind of on the easy side. Always need lots of butter. We also have a Sprouts right near Costco, and so I always try to swing by and get their creamy and crunchy unsweetened peanut butter because it is so good. Okay. Awesome having this pantry. I'm reading this book called Salt, Fat, Acid, and Heat because I want to learn how to cook better. And one of the things it taught me was to salt and season your meat ahead of time. And since I'm going to be using this meat tomorrow, I went ahead and salted it instead of just putting it in the freezer.
It tastes like the actual one you buy at Costco.
It literally tastes better than the ones you buy at Costco.
Yay, finally! You guys normally hate it.
It's actually the Shix.
It's like crunchy. It's like literally the exact same.
Mom, cut
it
it.
even looks the same. I can't even believe that.
It's exactly like the kind from Costco. They're identical.
It's okay.
I need a smaller one.
Just break it in half. Can you break it?
That looks like it's bigger.
No, that one's
Okay.
smaller.
I'm preparing the meat for the French dip sandwiches and I'm doubling this recipe. So this is early Monday morning before the kids even wake up. And my meat has been salted, but now I'm adding all the seasonings. I did sort of wing this recipe because I didn't have dried onion. So I had a mix that had dried onion in it. So I tried my best to wing this, but there's a lot of onion and garlic, and there's this better than bouillon beef broth paste stuff. I also added a umami blend, which is like a savory mushroom sort of flavor, and then some of my homemade chicken broth. I just tried to make this as savory and as seasoned as I could because French dip sandwiches are just really rich, and the broth, you use that to dip the sandwiches in. So my workday has started, the kids are off to school, I got a workout in, and now I'm setting up my dough for the quick burger buns, in this case sandwich buns, that I'm making later. That's my sourdough starter that's nice and bubbly. I really love using the bread machine for quick sourdough, well, hands-off sourdough. I learned this trick from Sarah Teresco, and I will link her recipe from her blog. But this is kind of a new way that I've started making sourdough that makes it really just streamlined and a part of my day. So now this is the, after school, and my dough is like huge now because there is some yeast as well as sourdough starter in this mix. So the dough rises really easily, especially when you don't have a lot of time. But these sandwich buns are incredibly easy, I promise you. If you just maintain your sourdough starter, I'll have to do another video on sourdough in general. But if you have a sourdough starter sitting around, this is so easy to make and to whip together for dinner. It's really just a matter of working it into your day. So I am shaping the loaves now. I'm going to set them on a pan and then let them rise for another hour or so before I pop them in the oven. But my meat has been cooking all day. So essentially the rest of this meal was hands off. I just put it all together at the end of the day. And this was definitely one of my favorite recipes of the week and one of the favorite things I've made in a long time. While the buns are rising, I whipped together a quick salad dressing. I used some mayo, some balsamic vinegar, some Dijon mustard, a clove of garlic, and just seasoned it. The meat and the broth were both melt in your mouth delicious, and this was the easiest, most set it and forget it meal ever. I can't believe I haven't thought of making this before. We went to a restaurant recently and I had this, and that's where it sparked the idea. But now this is definitely going on the menu. And for each sandwich, I put a piece of provolone on top and then toasted it real quick in our toaster oven. And I put a little salad on the side. And for me, I also added some pickled red onions. And when I say pickled, I mean I literally just cut up some red onions and poured some apple cider vinegar in the jar and set it in the fridge for an hour or so. I also salted it a little. So very easy, and it added a lot of flavor and some crunch. But yeah, this was amazingly delicious. We all love this meal. And the meat lasted us for another few days, which was awesome. We actually went back for seconds, and I was definitely stuffed by the end of this. All right, so our next meal of the week was going to be loaded steak fries. I had a lot of russet potatoes, but I didn't realize that they were past their prime. I learned this trick that if you cut them up and soak them in ice water that's salted, if you soak them for about 5 to 15 minutes, it revives them, and when you bake them, they'll be crispier. So I did that real quick. I didn't have a lot of time before I had to get the kids. I was working a lot on my computer this day. So I first got the potatoes ready and soaked, and then I cut up the peppers and the onions. And when I was finished doing that, I then drained the potatoes and laid them out on a towel to dry. So this was all the stuff I was able to get done before I went and picked up my kids, so that when I got back, dinner prep would be really easy. For this recipe, I heated the oven to 450, spread out the potatoes on a large sheet pan, put a generous amount of olive oil and salt on it, also a teaspoon of smoked paprika and a teaspoon of cumin, and toss those really well and try to get them flat. And then I put those in the oven until they were getting pretty crispy for about 20 minutes. And then pulled them out and carefully flipped them, and then cooked them again for another 15 minutes or so. The idea is I wanted them to be very crispy before I added on the other toppings. The meat from the French dip sandwiches. We were supposed to have more meat, but my husband's been enjoying it for lunches all week. I made this on Monday, and today's Thursday. But that one piece of meat got us through a big dinner on Monday, a couple of lunches, and now dinner tonight on Thursday. After adding the meat, I topped it with the sauteed peppers and onions and also some provolone cheese, and I baked that on a upper rack of the oven for about 10 minutes or so until the cheese was melted and everything was looking crispy.
Ooh, that looks beautiful.
You don't know we're actually about to eat dinner.
Please.
And do you want to watch the golf with me?
All right, so there you go. Another meal for this week. Nothing was wasted, everything was eaten, and I topped mine with pickled red onions, of course, and this was delicious. All right, so moving on to the final meal that I planned for this week. This is chicken and wild rice soup. I adapted this recipe from pinchofyum.com. This is her crock pot chicken and wild rice soup. So I had almost all of the ingredients for this except for the mushrooms. So I did buy that at Costco. As best I can, I tried to plan my meals around the ingredients that I already have. For this soup, I needed celery, carrots, onions, mushrooms, chicken broth, wild rice. I didn't have straight up wild rice. I used a blend because wild rice is really expensive. It was like $15 for a tiny package, and I just wasn't gonna do that. I love this meal because it's very comforting. I also used frozen onions. These onions I actually grew in my garden last year. I had like a wildly successful season in my garden last year, but I also definitely overdid it. So I don't know if I'm going to do a big garden this year. I'm definitely going to take it easy. But yeah, I also like to keep the scraps from the vegetables and store them in my freezer for when I make chicken broth or vegetable broth, as you see there. And I love any meal that I can just dump chicken into the pot and not have to touch it too much, because who really likes touching chicken anyways? But yeah, this chicken broth really enhances the flavor of any soup. I think it makes a big difference. I used a teaspoon or so of sage and thyme, and also umami, and salt and pepper, obviously. This is the wild rice that I mentioned. I'm just rinsing it and plopping it in there. And that's basically it for this recipe. I was able to put the lid on it, set it to the side, and just go about my day. At the end of the day, I was in a rush. Things were a little hectic this evening. You can tell by just the state of my kitchen. But I made a roux, and I did a 1/4 cup of butter, a 1/2 cup of flour, and whisked that up until it was nice and thick. And then I added about 2 cups of milk slowly and kept whisking that until it formed into kind of like a thick paste. And then I put this into the crock pot and mixed it in, and it made that soup really rich and creamy, which was so warm and comforting and delicious. I'm gonna go ahead and post a link to my blog, which will share the recipes I use. Just keep in mind that I do wing my recipes, so nothing is exact, but the idea is to give you some ideas and some inspiration so you can plan your week and take the mental load off a little bit. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoy.